to hit this. Lo and behold, it's the Wi-Fi drivers on the Linux laptop. Um, like Jay was saying, it does rely on that object-oriented idea, but basically I want you to think of, like he said, Mongoose is like a bridge between MongoDB land, your database, and your JavaScript backend, between all of that, between JavaScript land. And oftentimes with databases, whether it's SQL, MongoDB, Hadoop, which is a little more eccentric one than you'll usually find in web development. Although if you go off and work for Facebook or Google, you'll learn about it pretty quickly. You're always going to have some sort of means or methods of navigating these databases kind of indirectly, because short of SQL probably is the most user-friendly of the bunch, but even then it's awful. Most databases are just flat out awful to use by default. And that's where you have object relational mappers like Mongoose, or having done a fair smattering of PHP development, which I'm not proud of, but I've done it anyway. So having worked in Laravel has one called Eloquent, which is actually a fantastic ORM. Laravel itself is actually a fantastic framework as well. A little more heavy-handed than Express, but it's pretty decent. And then what it comes down to is you have your Mongoose schema. And give me a second here. I'm going to make a directory. Actually, I can just do git clone. Let's see. Let's do. There we go. That'll do. Oh my gosh, look at that. That's beautiful. That's not sarcastic at all, actually. I am.
Yeah, I thought you were, oh my gosh, and because you had another technical difficulty going on.
No, I'm actually thoroughly pleased right now.
Yeah.
There's a reason I paid $2,000 for this laptop. So what it comes down to is that your object relational mappers like Mongoose allow you to type back and forth. And so you create this model within Mongoose of your data. And you'll usually within a given application, you'll have several models. I think for the sample archive that I did with Angular, I think we ended up having about 8 or 9 different models. Admittedly, that was not a very well-planned project. We probably could have done it better, but we had 8 or 9 models. And then, hold on a second here, I'm just updating some of the stuff so I can pull down your project. And then, here we go. What it also comes down to is then you have Express. So Express, like I said, there's this whole idea of model view controller, and Express is the controller. Express is like the best analogy I can think of coming from my world is a mixer. But really what it comes down to just in blank terms is that it's controlling the flow of the application. It's directing where data goes, where requests go, where responses are sent, and that's basically what it does, is it handles requests and responses for you. And it does it in a very elegant way. If you tried to do that in vanilla Node JavaScript, you would find yourself writing a lot more code.
Gotcha.
A lot more code. But that's basically what it does. So then within that controlling the flow, we have routes. And routes allow you to have set points where you interact with an application. So that's why it's called an endpoint, because it is the dedicated point at your application. It represents a dedicated point in your application where something can go to request information from it.
Okay.
And then, so you have your MongoDB, which is your database. You have Mongoose, which ties that to your JavaScript land. You have Express, which then directs the flow between that bridge. So it's basically directing how accesses what with whom over that Mongoose bridge to your database.
Okay.
So there's 3 layers right there.
Yep.
Then we have Vue.js on the front end.
Yep.
And Vue.js is your front end. It is how you create the actual application that the user sees. Um, and that's where there are a number of libraries that allow you to do that. We cover Vue.js and React in the course. Another popular one is Angular. But what it comes down to in either case is that you have these kind of 4 parts working together. So you'll have the user have an interaction on the front end. They see it as something like clicking like on Facebook, or adding something to their cart on Amazon, or clicking play on a YouTube, or clicking a link on a YouTube video, right, to watch it. That interaction kicks off a series of events, but it's really on their end, it kicks off an event, an interaction. That interaction triggers something within the front end library that's usually being used to set off some sort of communication with the controller, with, in this case, Express, to say, it kicks off the communications that sends out and requests something usually, whether it's, hey, I'm sending you new information to be stored, I'm requesting that we store this, or I'm requesting that I can get something back from this interaction, depending on the type of interaction we need.
Okay.
And then it goes through that interaction on the back end and expresses, okay, well, this is the endpoint for this dedicated interaction. This is what you've reached. I then go through and perform these set of the series of events based upon the type of action that this user has told me that it wants. And I go do either put something in the database, or I fetch something from the database, or replace something in the database, or if something doesn't go right, I kick back an error.
Yep.
And then I come back with, okay, this is what I did, this is what I've come back with for the action you've requested, and it returns that and it communicates it back to that front end. And then that front end goes, oh, okay, this is what I've got. Then the library, you write code on the front end using your library, using something like Vue.js or React, to do something with the response, to reflect the result of an action. It's very much a cause and effect relationship.
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. Yep. Thank you.
And so what it comes down to is, so you have your routes files, and that's controlling the flow.
Okay.
And then you have your hero.js. That is your front end side of things. That is where it's controlling the flow of data on the front of your application. And so if you look through that file, what you'll see is a lot of functions, initialization of data that the user might use that is available to the user to use in their interactions. And then we really just bind that to flat out HTML to kind of build up an actual interface for the user to interact with.
Okay. Yep.
And so when the user does something, the HTML is what they actually see.
Sure.
The Vue.js app is what kicks off that interaction, that series of events.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. So like working from the ground up, you'd build your model first, and then routes, and then your front end, obviously, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's kind of the bog standard way of doing it. In reality, like Jay was saying, you will bounce between them. Yeah. To say that you will always start with models is foolish.
Sure. Yeah.
For the sample optimization archive, we started with experiments and samples and just built up a front end from there. And then we added more. I mean, we ended up needing, okay, well, now we need requests, because we need to have a request model to represent, to store what a request for samples is. And we need to then build up the interface surrounding that throughout all these different pages in Angular. And then we were like, oh, well, we need users now, because we can't just have everyone making requests back and forth and modifying each other's content. So we had to come up with a user type. And we implemented that, and we had authorization, authentication. Actually, it had users to begin with, but that was one of the base data types. You had samples, experiments, and users, basically, with some sort of login.
Okay.
And then we had requests, and then we added orders, right? So you have order data type that allows you to efficiently reference multiple requests.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that'll make sense.
Yeah, so that's what the purpose of, that's what the insanity all means.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to have you do, what we're going to do today now is, I'm glad you asked this actually for the first part of class, because as you guys are going through over the next day and a half and working on your villains API
Hmm.
and the villain side of this project, understanding those relationships is really paramount.
Yeah.
And it's critical to understanding why we build applications the way we do.
Sure.
And so as you go throughout your time as a web developer, you will find that you have to tune your approach based upon the type of application you're developing. If I'm developing a application that does something like it just displays a lot of data, I might really work on that user interface first. I might just do a lot of mockups, do a lot of design, do a lot of consultation, create some mock graphs using something like a D3JS, which is a
Yeah.
fantastic JavaScript data library for doing front ends visualizations of data.
Okay.
I might do something like that, and then I'll just go back and work on the front end, or sorry, on the back end as I need it.
Yeah, sure.
Something that's much more user interaction driven, where people are making purchases, making requests for items, are submitting orders, are editing their accounts and stuff like that. With that, I usually want to go data first. So I'll start with the models, or at least a rough idea of the models.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, okay, let's get some basic stuff here that I think I'll need. So a user should have like a name, a username, right, a password, an email, some contact info,
Yeah. Sure.
stuff like that, right? And they'll be like, okay, well, a product should have a name, a price, quantity, and and then from there I can really get going. I can have, well, then an order should have a total, a shipping address, a purchase date, and it should reference whatever items
Sure.
are in it, and they'll go from there. But tuning that approach based upon what application needs to be developed is really critical, because I found that a lot of times it's easy to get stuck in one methodology of development, and it will bite you in the butt every time.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So that is kind of my spiel on it. And Jay, feel free to add your 2 cents too, because the thing is, Jay here has been developing by accident longer than I have on purpose. So, is that pretty fair, Jay? Is that a pretty fair assessment? Oh, you're muted.
Of how long I've been developing?
Well, that too, but just of kind of tuning the approach of your development based upon.
Yeah, based on the app and based on different parts of the app. Smaller apps, you're probably going to be able to just come up with a pretty straightforward game plan and just tackle it, and you'll be fine. But like a large app is going to have many layers to it. It's going to have many large subsystems. You think about just any well-designed app of any significant size. It's going to have major subsystems for handling like the theming of the app, the styling, so that you get like a nice universal styling throughout the whole app. It's going to have subsystems around user permissions. You've got to have some straightforward way of managing who can do what within the app. What is your access level, and how does it behave depending on your access level? That's a huge problem right there. And you can't have your code full of just all kinds of little checks, if this, do that. There has to be like some more architecture to that. It has to be more cleanly designed. So, a lot of times, and one of the great things about modern development and about a framework like React is it really does let you break the application into these major subsystems.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really
Right.
nice. You can then
And
Then you look at a given
Yes.
file and you can tell, like, oh, this file is just worrying about this concern. It's worrying about only security, or it's worrying about it's only dealing with how something looks. It's
Sure.
not dealing with security and how something looks. Then that starts to get confusing.
Right. Gotcha.
Right. Right. So, yeah. Anyways, let's go ahead and let's get started here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and say, do you feel good to go there, Ryan? Are you ready to start off here? All right. So here's my challenge to you, and here's how we're going to work this. You are now ready to code up your villains.
Okay.
What you do is start off by coding a villain model. And I'm going to say take about, it's only you, so frankly, take as long as you need.
Okay.
Take 15 minutes if you need to. Make it look good. Ask questions. And if you have questions, go ahead and ask me or Jay.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm probably going to putter around and do some dishes and whatever, but
I'm sticking here. I'm here.
okay.
I'm right here. I'll be having the solution up here with me, and honestly, I'm going to be coding the solution again to right there with you.
Okay.
We're going to work together on this separately, but we're going to work together, and I'm going to code up the new solution with you, and we're going to get this working. All right?
All right. Sounds good.
So let's check back in at about 7:38 and take some time with it.
Okay. All right. Sounds good, Sean.
Here we go. All right. Have fun with it. I know models aren't always the most fun, but
I'm going to mute my end so I can listen to some music, if that's all right with you.
if that helps you focus, absolutely. The one tip I will give is look at your superhero model.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm doing.
All right, good. Go for it.
Alrighty. Okay, I think I'm all good to go.
All right. We're going to share. Do you want to share your desktop and show us, or I don't know how you guys typically do this?
So go ahead and share your screen. Before I was saying that, I muted myself. Go ahead and share your screen there for me,
Okay.
and walk us through your solution. Walk me through your thinking. Tell me why you made certain code decisions, why you followed a certain syntax. I mean,
Yeah.
pretend
Okay.
I'm new to this.
What's that, Sean?
So,
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
yeah. There we go. So go ahead and walk me through this. That's important.
Alrighty. Cool. So essentially formatted it the same as superhero. Basically just changed superhero to villain. So I guess by requiring Mongoose, we are, like Jay mentioned earlier, building that bridge between MongoDB and our JavaScript.
Exactly.
So we have to require that. Otherwise, it won't pick up what we're feeding it. And then for the const villain schema, this is so essentially what this is telling you is for the fields that we're going to be entering in, the data type that it will take, and then whether or not this field is required for our app to run. Does that all sound right there? Okay. And then with the villain schema methods load data, this is just telling it that obviously we're giving it a function that when we put data into like the name, the power, or the image field, essentially that's what it's supposed to do with it. So we're using a ternary if here. Which I guess I'm getting a little hung up on exactly what this is saying right now. So it's like if we put the name in, change it, or and then what does the this dot name? What does that?
So that's a good question. So what this is doing, you were right on track there with that. So what it's saying is, for a given instance of a villain, if there is a name property in the data n, so if we've given a new name, if that exists, set the name property of that given villain to the value provided. Otherwise, set it back to the pre-existing value. Okay. So what that's designed to do is in one clean shot, let's say I'm updating my hero. I may not want to update all the fields at once, right? And this allows me to do that. And so what it's doing here is if I update a hero on the front end, I'm accessing my put route. And so what this is allowing me to do is say, well, I only want to change the superpower from, say, invincibility to flight. I don't want to also have to change the name or the image or something like that.
Sure.
So I can just change one field, submit it in. And what it'll do is it'll say, well, does data in.name exist? No, because I haven't changed it. I haven't set it on the front end, right? Mm-hmm. It's not part of that object we're passing into our put endpoint.
Sure.
It's part of the modification. However, then it goes down to superpower and it says, okay, well, this has been changed. I do have a new value here. There is a key value pair. So because of that, it's going to execute the left-hand side of that ternary, and it's going to say, all right, for this villain here, you have a new value for your power. And then it goes
Right.
to the image, and it goes, hey, image, is there something here that in the input data that I need to change here? Is there something under the image property? And it says, well, no, it's undefined. So then it says, okay, well, in that case, I'm going to keep it the same. We already have an image property set, so we're gonna keep it there.
Gotcha.
And if I
Okay.
could make one quick, actually, keep going. We'll make that in a second.
Okay. Sounds good.
Keep going. So keep talking to me.
Yep.
Let's go into that set metadates.
All right. So the metadates. Again, we're creating another function here. Let's see here. Give me a second here. I got to think on this one.
Yeah, it's a tricky function. It took me a while to actually get it right.
Oh, I see. Okay. So this has to do with up above on lines 7 and 8. We've got our created and our modified. So this is just showing that. So this created will be okay. So it's
Do you want me to help you through this one?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Sean.
All right. So let's start with it's a method. So it's
Yeah.
behavior we're defining. And set metadates, what it's really this function is about is keeping track of when a hero was created and when it's been updated.
Right.
And that's just useful information to a system in general, but it's useful. It also gives you exposure to the JavaScript date type. And I think that's really important to know how to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So then, let's go over this. So let post date equal new date.
Right.
So this represents we're creating a new date when every time this method is invoked, we're creating a new date and time. All right,
Yep.
because this method is being invoked, and the way we have it called on our front end, it's only invoked when we either post a villain or we update it via a put call. So we're about to change, we're changing something with a villain. We're updating a value or we're creating a new villain.
Yep.
So it's creating a new date and time to mark either a creation or an update. That's what
Right.
post is. And then what we're doing down here, and I don't know why I declared it as let, because technically we could declare that as const and it would be just fine.
Okay.
I actually changed that in my code. That's my mistake. There we go. So perfect. Yeah. There we go. And I saw Jay smile there, so const for everything.
Can I offer up one little tidbit?
Yeah.
I figure like this is kind of a good place as any to introduce this concept. Have you? So we've got all these ternaries in here, like line 12, 13, 14. We've got all these ternaries, which is fine. It's doing the job. But I'm just curious. Like I'd like to introduce like an alternative syntax that you might find is easier to read. So let's just edit line 14, and
Okay.
let's delete that stuff that's in the parentheses all the way to the question mark. Let's delete the question mark. Just the friends, the question mark itself. Yep. One more backspace. Yep. And then instead of a colon, put a logical or operator there. So
Very sweet.
So the way this works is it has to do with the way the logical operators work. So this is an or. So an or means this or that is true, right? So in JavaScript, if something has a value, it's truthy, and if something doesn't have a value, it's falsy. Right? The falsy values are null, undefined, 0, the empty string, and not a number. Okay, so if it's any of those values, it's falsy. But if it's not any of those values, it's truthy. And so image assumedly is going to have like a URL or something stored in it, or it might be a binary blob. I don't really know, but so image initially is probably going to have nothing in it. So that would be undefined or null, or it could be an empty string. They're all falsy. So if we arrange our code like this with this little logical OR, then what it's saying is assign data in image to this dot image. But if data in image is falsy, then assign this dot image. That's the value that we already have.
Okay.
Right. So it's exactly the same as it was. It's the exact same logic, just like line 13 above it is using a ternary to do that. It's just the exact same logic. It's just like a more succinct way of doing it, and you'll see it because that's a very common syntax among JavaScript developers.
Okay. I like that.
So yeah, that's really syntactically direct, and I like that. I've always thought that those ternary statements are a little, like, they make sense to me in some regards because it's like you're asking a question. Is this, well, this or this? But that right there, that plays upon logical operators in a very nice and direct way, and I just really like that. So I agree. I'm actually going to update my code to use that.
So we can go ahead now down to line 20. And we can make the same change. Go ahead and you can fix that stuff up. Lines 12 and 13 in that file. And then we can bop down to line 20 in both files. And you get also a very nice bit of logic. So on line 20, we've got to flip it. So what we're saying is, we want to assign this dot created to this dot created if it's already there. Otherwise, we want to assign post date. So it's just going to be the reverse. The logical OR, the two sides of the logical OR are just going to be flipped from like how we have it on line 14.
So it's going to go right here, Jay. Is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Get rid of this.
Yeah, get rid of that guy. And you can dump the colon and the parens and the not.
Okay.
So you see it's saying this dot created is equal to this dot created, but only if this dot created is truthy. If it's there. If this dot created is not there yet, then assign it to post date.
Okay.
Okay? So that's, it's some little syntactical sugar. Just thought you might want to see that. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's I like that way.
So then there's a kind of way that you use logical and to also do some nice things in your code. So in this case, we're using the OR to assign a default value. That's what we're doing. We're saying, the value is going to be this, but if that doesn't exist, then take a default from somewhere. The value is going to be data in.name, but if data in.name is not there, just use the value that you already have. Or on line 20, the value is going to be this dot created, but if this dot created hasn't been assigned yet, then use post date as our initial value. So the logical OR is generally used to assign some kind of initial value, default value. That's where it plays in. The logical AND is used to create what's called a guard. And we'll see that at some point, but this is enough for now.
Yeah.
That is really nice. So then what we're doing here is basically just like Jay said, this dot created, we're checking if there's an existing value. If there is, we want to keep that the same because we want to keep our created date the same, right? But if it doesn't exist yet, we want to make it the post date. because that means we're doing a post operation. We're creating a new hero. And this dot modified, we just set that to the post date because that's going to get updated every single freaking time. So,
Right. Gotcha.
so does that make sense now?
Yeah, that does. Yeah.
Nice. And then give me that last line there on the model.
Okay. So I think what this is saying is that if we're going to export this file and like reference it in any other files, we're going to reference it as villain schema.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. There you go. And that is about as direct model as you can get. So the one change I'm going to have us make here is one that is just a data integrity change. So up on your image in your villain.js and on your superhero.js as well, what we're going to do here is we're going to create a set of brackets here surrounding the villain.js of the image. So see, kind of like we have it there with name type equals string required equals true, we're going to make that change right there.
Okay, gotcha.
Because I'm going to hold off of it tonight, but tomorrow we are going to do some test-driven development, and this will be very important. Actually, we're not really doing test-driven development because if you guys were doing TDD, you would write the tests first and then write the code, but we're going to introduce you to the concept of it. Then make sure to write type in front of string there, Ryan.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Careful there. And same with your villain. There you go.
So Sean, in Mongoose, can you ask Mongoose to validate your objects before you actually save them to the database?
You can do that via the Mongoose pre method. The reason I'm abstaining from using that is because it can get very hairy very quickly.
And it's all back-end validation anyway. It's all happening on server.
Yeah, it's all back-end validation. So if you want to do serverless validation, if you want to do it, you have to implement something in the front end.
Right.
Which we can start doing that. And I would be more than happy to start showing some HTML default validation methods and some JavaScript validation methods. Those are really, really important to do because they keep your user from doing either dumb or potentially very malicious things, like injecting code into your database and then corrupting your entire server. Nothing spoils. I'm bet Pierre could speak to this. Nothing spoils, a midnight call like, hey, so we had someone hack in and they destroyed our entire code base. Can you come
That
to?
would suck.
I bet Jay's had to deal with that at least once or twice. Yeah, have you ever had someone inject code?
No, but you want to validate.
You want to validate, yeah. And the way I always view it is client-side validation. It's a little bit expensive on their end, but it's far less expensive than having to validate the input of 1 million users on your server.
Yeah.
That's why running more stuff like that on the client side is a better idea. Take up their resources. Their resources technically don't cost you a damn thing.
Right.
Yeah. So don't be mean. Don't be like, here, you're also going to calculate 1 million of our statistical operations here for our data analysis.
Right.
Free. So no, that was good. So here's what we're going to do again is we're going to take a little break. Then when you come back, I'm going to have you write your routes 2 at a piece, basically. So, all right.
Sounds good.
Rocket. See you soon.
All right, 15 minutes? Okay.
All right, cool.
Again, and welcome back, everyone. So what we're going to do now is take a look at your routes file, all right, or your routes folder, and take a look at your superhero routes within that. Okay?
Yeah.
So what I can tell you here is if you try and write all the routes at once, you're going to hate your life. Start with just doing the get and the post routes. Okay? So
Okay.
start by actually, if you really want an even smaller goal, start by just setting up the routes file in general, not even creating any routes. Or do you want to start? Do you want to set up the file and create some routes? How dangerous are you feeling?
Let's go for it.
All right, so here's your task for the next 10 or so minutes.
Okay.
Set up the routes file, code your get all, so not your get by ID, but your get all and your post route.
Okay.
The modern syntax, okay?
All right.
All right,
All right. Sounds good.
go,
I'm gonna
go.
I'm gonna mute again so I can listen to some music.
Go for it. All right.
Hey, Sean. I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I spelled villains wrong earlier. I realized while trying to make that routes file. How can I update that in my thread?
The name of the file
Yeah.
in Atom. So in Atom, right click the file and then go down to rename. If I had a dime for every time I misspelled a file naming, I would be Bill Gates.
Gotcha. Okay.
There you go.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh no, I guess I did spell it right. It's just not It's not letting me choose the villains.js file.
So let me choose. Go ahead and share your screen for me. Let me take a look here.
Do that.
Directory. Oh, so you cd into routes. So hit ls here real quick for me. Oh, you're in routes. Okay. So this, no, you're right where you need to be. So now all you need to do is go into your Atom and just open up your villains file right there. You're good. You're doing fine.
Oh, okay. Oh, so I don't have to enter it in the terminal.
No, it's
Gotcha.
already there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, there you go. Give it up.
All right, perfect. All right. Got my get all on my post. You're muted, Sean.
That is horrible. That's great. I'm muted. So, all right. So go ahead and bring up your code here for me.
All right.
Let's take a look and walk me through again.
Okay.
All right. So that looks good. There's one thing you're missing down at the bottom, though. So scroll down to the bottom of your superheroes.
Gotcha.
There you go. And so if you ever want that to work, you need to tell it where to go. Connect those wires.
Sure.
There we go. And then so walk me through here.
Okay. So we're requiring Express because, if I remember right, that Express is basically just kind of telling everything how to interact together. And then the router. I understand what the router does down here. Not totally sure why we're calling it with Express up here, though. So could you explain that real quick?
Absolutely. So what we're doing here is, now technically we don't have to do that, but it's a thing we do with code that makes it more explicit. So
Okay.
Express has a subset of the Express framework is the router library.
Okay. Gotcha.
Patch the routing behavior and call it specifically on the router subset of the framework. So what we're doing here is we're just making it more explicit by storing that router part of the library in a variable.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. That makes sense. And then we are constructing our villain variable, and here we are requiring, I think, just showing that the URL that we'll use to access that villain variable is as follows.
No, not. All we're doing is we're just pulling in the contents of the model's villain file. We're pulling in whatever was exported
right.
from that file and putting it into our villain variable so we can use it in this file.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's just pulling what we'll need. So what we're doing there is we're basically saying, hey, I'm going to need this so I can access the villain's methods and the data types so I can create my villains. So it's just like saying, I'm going to need this blueprint here so I know what to do when I need to create or update or get a villain, right?
Sure. Gotcha. Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense then.
Yeah.
And then here now we're just showing the route which we will be using for our get and our post. And I guess the best way for me to reference it is like over here for our get single, our put, and our delete. We're just trying to access one hero there, where here we're trying to access all of the data. So we're either trying to pull all of the villains or put a new villain in, or post a new villain, create a new villain. So yeah, that's why we're using that route.
All right. So the routes. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yep. And then here's our get function. And
so it's not just a function, it's a method. So it's your get route. It's your get verb. It's your get.
Right.
It's your get.
Yeah. Perfect. Then this is request response, or is it require request response?
Request response, right.
Then we got our if else statement here, which
Wait a second. What is that line up on line 7 doing?
So yeah, not too sure what that one's doing there.
So what that's doing there, so remember, we're calling the mongoose method of find on the villain blueprint. And what that's saying is, hey, mongoose, I want you to find me every single villain that exists.
Okay.
Because we're not passing in a search object as a part of the find method, which I actually created a search method or a search endpoint there
Gotcha.
in the solution app that I wanted to show you guys, but we'll get to that at a later point probably.
Okay.
What this is basically saying is I want every villain that exists. And so when you call that method, you need two parts of the function you pass into it. You need, if there's an error first, you want to deal with the error first, and then you have your success.
Okay.
So keep going then.
Gotcha. So then if we do get an, oh, okay, gotcha. So that makes a little more sense now. So then if we do get an error, it's going to read back to us that there was an error and that data does not exist. Otherwise, it's going to tell us that it's going, let's see here. It'll say successfully retrieved all villains, and then it'll provide that data for us.
Exactly.
So then moving down to the post route, again, request response. So this is for us to create a new villain. So it's letting new villain equal, remind me again how new functions here.
So think back to the constructor helper I gave you, right? When I invoke the keyword new in JavaScript and I follow it with the villain, this is invoking a constructor function. This is constructor notation. What's doing is it's giving you basically a blank copy of the villain data type. It's saying, I want just give me the default blueprint, give me the default values, and give me a blank new copy here of a villain. I'll set everything else myself explicitly.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. And then here, I guess I realize both these are coming from our villains model, but I'm not too sure. I guess not too sure exactly how they're working here.
All right. So when we create a method in Mongoose, what we're doing is we're giving it a behavior. We're giving the data type an additional behavior, a custom behavior that will be available to every instance of that data type. Okay? So when it really does play off that first line there, understanding that first line. So when I create a new blank villain data type, because I have defined those methods and they're now available to every instance of that villain data type, new villain, having been created as a new instance of the villain data type, will have access to those methods.
Okay.
And then I just can call the load data method, pass it the information that is in my request, which will then go through the mongoose method and set whatever's in there appropriately, or it will encounter an error if it's not appropriate, right?
Yep.
And then you go down the line to the set metadates function, which again is just a default behavior we've defined as a method available to every instance of the data type. And that's just going to execute and call that function to say, okay, now I want you to run this. And since set metadates doesn't take any arguments, it just does all the calculations and computation itself. It takes care of what it does. It finishes running next. And then we're good to go. We've loaded, basically, our new villain is ready to be saved.
Okay. Gotcha. That makes sense. And then, so now we're ready to save the new villain. So that's what that next line is, line 16.
Right.
And I guess if there's an error in our formatting, is that what it's?
If there's really any error at all, whether it's my database isn't running, There's malformed data or incorrect data.
Yep.
The computer just messed up. The server messed up. Whatever it is, if there's any error, if something goes wrong and that villain is not successfully able to complete the save action.
Gotcha. Okay. So then if there is an error, we'll get the message error. Otherwise, it'll return successfully created new villain, and then it'll give their name, and then with updated data.
Yep. So it's going to send back the new villain for use on the front end. So that way we can update our front end data.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right.
And then the last line, module.exports equals router. I'm not too sure what's going on here.
So think about it this way. We have that router part of the library, right?
Yep.
You call the route method and tell it basically what endpoint we're going to use, which we're about to go into server.js and configure it out real quick.
Okay.
And then we chain that with the get method. We set that all up. And then we chain that with the post method, set that all up. And what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, I've configured the routes I want to use for this route file. I'm going to now that I've configured those and I've set it all up and I've set up the logic for those, I'm going to ship it out back to my main server file so it can be used for incoming requests and responses.
Okay, gotcha.
Saying, all right, good here. Let's package up. Or if you really, I was able to show the class a little bit better this afternoon, or not the class, but Hannah and Travis. I spun my laptop around, and right behind here, I have a semi-modular synth. What it's basically doing is it's like going from one module, plugging in a cord on one end, going down to another one, plugging in. It's like, okay, there's now a live feed between these two. They're connected. So that way, when we get an incoming request, the server can go up, you go take that logic, do what you need to do, and then come back to me.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense now.
So it'll make even more sense there when we open up our server.js. So just that main file. There we go. So take a look down there. See line 15? You need to add a variant of that below on line 16 and give me a new line on line 16, actually. So go ahead and go, what are you going to put here? What do you think?
So it'd be app.use.
Good, that's a good start.
That'll be
good. And then up on, take a look at line 6. Give me a couple lines there. Now take a look at line 5. You need to provide the villain roots just like we provided the hero roots, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead and do that. There you go. Let me shift this over a bit. Perfect. Save it.
Cool. Got it saved.
All right. So now you're ready to test it and run your server. We're going to do manual testing here, manually creating data and just seeing what happens.
Okay. Sounds good.
Good.
So it's what was it, npm start
or nodemon-server.js is what I personally use.
Okay.
Yeah. They haven't really configured an npm start yet. We'll probably do that as the last step here, just some. What? Oh, you're still in your routes folder, so go back up one.
Oh, okay.
So cd dot. There you go. Now run that command again. So just hit the up arrow. That'll work. Okay. Okay, so not able to find module routes villains. So let's take a look here. Go ahead and let's see here. Yeah, you do have the file misspelled actually. You have villians. So under the routes file.
Oh yeah.
So right click and hit rename there for me real quick. Isn't the great val shift such a wonder?
Oh man.
all that Franco-Norman spelling biting us in the butt.
I was looking at it and I was like, God, I think that's spelled wrong. And then I
Vilam.
tested myself. All right.
Gosh. Yeah, I can tell you all about Vilam and the history of that word. There we go. That's it done. All right, so open up Postman. And let's post some data. And take this one slow, because remember, Postman can be super confusing if you don't take it slow. You think you're doing stuff, you'll think that your code is broken. That's really just you're moving too fast with Postman. So go ahead and let's start by setting our localhost back to just localhost 3000/API/villains. And then change the method to post, right? And then go to body. Nope, don't send it yet. And then go ahead and you need to just fill out these fields. And remember, it's not superpower you have power.
Right. Gotcha.
So there you go. And fill these out
Still on Hulk.
with this incredible George.
All right. Give me a villain here, Sean.
Dr. Doom is my personal favorite.
All right. What does Dr. Doom do?
He has technomancy, technically.
Techno. Yeah, like that?
Like that. Send him on in. Nice.
Hey.
And then go ahead and change your type to get.
Okay. And then, oh yeah.
No ID. Just get them all.
All right.
Nice.
Cool.
There you go. All right. So that's a success.
Okay.
All right. So, all right. Again, what I'm going to challenge you to do here is take a look at your get by ID, put, and delete routes.
Okay.
Take about another 15, 20 minutes. Let's give it on 20. Take another 20 and see if you can peel through those guys, okay?
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
All right. Cool.
You don't say.
I don't say.
Oh, Lord.
Do you have you ever played Dominion?
Dominion? A little. A little. It's a fun game.
Oh, you know Dominion?
I do. Yeah. I know Dominion. I try and stay away from too many video games nowadays. I have a PS4 and I have a Nintendo Switch, but I mostly let the girlfriend and I play them together. So for me, my obsession is definitely the music production side. So
Well, Dominion's lightweight. I mean, it's just a card game.
it's fun though. I love it. It's so much fun. It's so much more fun than Risk. Like if I'm gonna play a game for hours, I'm gonna play Dominion. But I'm not gonna play Risk.
Yeah, well, it's always a new game. You get to lay out 10 different cards all the time, and it's just like you never know what it's going to be. So I like that. It doesn't really get old like a lot of games.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of games just get old. Like, God, if I ever have to play Monopoly again, well, okay, no, I like Monopoly. The only problem with Monopoly is it breaks apart families.
Yeah, no, it's a terrible game. Monopoly's a terrible game.
This game. It's like, yes, let's prey upon the worst behaviors of humanity.
Yeah, exactly. It's horrible. It's horrible. I mean, it's a great lesson of how not to be.
Oh, God. Isn't it, though?
Are you happy now? No, I'm crying. Right. That's capitalism. Have fun.
It's capitalism now. That's the best thing I heard all day. Are you happy? No, I'm crying. That's capitalism. Have fun. Come on, man. I'm the English major. I'm supposed to say that stuff. Oh, God. But the great thing about, it's kind of like the Winston Churchill quote, right? Capitalism is the worst form of economy, except for all the other ones.
I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think we can do
Oh,
better.
they're all have inherent awful flaws.
Oh, sure, exactly,
The
exactly.
economy is just like short of an actual government, short of actual governance, like forms of government. Uh, Economy, there is no such thing as a good economy or a good economic model, I should say.
Yep. Yeah.
Capitalism's too cutthroat. Communism, no one gets anything done. Socialism is completely idealistic.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that they all involve humans.
Hmm. That's exactly it. Capitalism is the most realistic of the bunch. It's just like, look, people are competitive and they're mean. We can use that to the advantage.
Do you mountain bike, Sean?
I used to more than my bike got stolen. I've been a mediocre mountain biker, but a stellar road cyclist. I'm not. Of course, I've dropped a decent amount of weight, so I don't know how fast I'd be anymore. But I'm a stellar road cyclist, and I'm an okay runner. I'm not the best. I'm not that guy that's going to be running a marathon in 2 hours and 30 minutes. But I enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's much less about how you compare to other people and just what do you enjoy.
Well, for me, I mean, why do you are you I know you're big on bicycling. Do you like to bicycle a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I go through phases where I bike and phases where I don't. But I'm not a runner. My body doesn't like to run. Um,
The body didn't used to.
so I have a nice road bike and I've had a decent mountain bike for a long time, but I just recently bought a new really sweet mountain bike, and so I'm just highly motivated to ride that a lot. But
Yeah.
I started mountain biking when I was young, and I you know I've just done it a lot, and I did it a lot when I was young and crazy, and so I've done so I can do it. I can go do it, and I can scare myself and have a good time and write a lot of technical stuff, and you know I can do all that. I'm glad about that. It's fun.
I just don't have the twitch reflexes. What it comes down to, I have endurance, mental and physical, but I do not have twitch reflexes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I live right next to this like world class mountain biking park. Got like 50 miles of trails and tons of puzzles. Like the trails are all made for bikes. They're bermed and there's jumps and there's just all these crazy things. And I'm relatively new to it up there, riding up there, and I go and I ride the trails and I can ride them, and I'm kind of amazed that I can ride them. I'm just like, holy crap, yeah, I've got a lot of I don't know, like muscle memory or whatever, just sort of.
I muscle memory plays a huge role with that. I mean, that I'm jealous of that because I mean, you have this sort of you don't just have the twitch reflexes, you have the muscle memory. So your body just instinctively remembers, oh yeah, this, oh yeah, this. And mine, it's like, oh wait, I actually have to think about it and be like, well, wait, is it this or is it this? You know? And I think that's why I drifted towards running more is because I can just, yeah. It's like the one part of my day where I don't have to think.
Right.
And so I used to be a 233-pound asthmatic.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. Like
You weigh 233.
I was a big guy. And
How tall are you?
5'8". That's hefty.
Yeah.
Big
What
kid.
do you weigh now?
155. Probably put on a couple pounds this weekend, so probably I'll shoot at 157.
Uh-huh.
Moving does awful things for your health, man. It's just like you said it this morning. You were like, "Oh man, I'm moving and I'm stressed." I was just like, "I just went through that. I know exactly how that feels."
Yeah. Sucks. It sucks. I mean, thankfully, like I live in this community. I live in this. It's a co-housing community.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like 35 units here. They're like condos, basically. And so I'm just moving to a different unit. So I can just walk there. Like I'm literally walking a wheelbarrow back and forth between my old place and my new place. So I don't have to like put in a car, get a U-Haul or whatever it is,
We had to do all that. It's awful.
Yeah. Well, and when I moved from Montana, I got rid of like literally about probably 90% of what I owned. And so I just have like next to nothing now. So it's great. Easy.
I don't know. This studio of mine is like, it's not just my pride and joy. It's literally it's my other sanity check. I mean, I can get lost in producing music for hours. I can work on a snare drum for 6 hours, a snare drum, and not look up. And, I've actually gotten some decent headphones now to the point where I don't have to bang it on the speakers all the time, so I don't piss off the neighbors, but too much. But I love having. I mean, I'm impressed with myself because I haven't bought a new synthesizer in 2 years, and it's like a record for me. For a while, there was like a new synth every 6 months. Because I just love these things. They're so much fun, and they all have unique characteristics, and they all have unique sounds. And people ask me like, "Well, why do you need another one?" I'm just like, because it's a new instrument I can play. It's a new sonic palette. It's a new architecture. It's a new field. It's a new palette to play with. It's just.
Yeah, I get it.
This Moog over here, really nice sounding synth. Big, fat, beefy oscillators, really good sounding filter. It's warm, but it's not appropriate for everything. I think that it's good for just kind of nice, clean, warm sounds. Whereas, this Pulse 2 over here is just dirty. It sounds just like I can get some really growling stuff out of it that I just can't get out of the Moog. And then like my favorite one is this Andromeda over here, which its oscillators they're kind of weak sounding for an analog, but it has all this crazy envelopes and LFOs, and you can just use them to create wild sounds that you just couldn't anywhere else. And then it's just, I should have taken that as a sign that I should have gone for CS right from the start, CS and math and stuff like that. It's I don't know how I let myself get talked into English the first go around, but I did. That's a done thing. But I'm putting myself back. This is my last year of CS, and it might be either my last year of math or I'll have one semester of math after this.
What do you think about the CS program there?
It's about to get really good.
Why?
They just hired a new professor who's excellent, a new lecturer who's excellent, and we're about to get another professor. When I started in the program, I might run into a new CS major once every 3 to 4 months. And now, in the period of the past 2 weeks, I've met like 3. So they're starting to become more prevalent, and that's really things like oh, Ryan.
Yep, all good.
All good. You're fast. Yep. All right, bring it on up. Let's see this. Better than that, did you test them?
No, I did not. Let me do that real quick. You guys keep talking.
Oh no! It's come on.
Okay.
Come on. We can debate code and stuff all day. I wanna see what we've done, and we're here to teach. So, all right, let's take a look.
So, starting down here at line 22. All right, and so essentially the same as up top, except now our route is for an individual villain rather than the entire group. So that's why it's villain underscore ID. Again, our .get route starts with the request response. And here, we're finding the villain by the ID. And then this right here is requiring the parameters of the villain ID.
Right.
Yep. And then same thing here. If so, this is showing that if that ID does not exist, it's going to return our error message. Whereas if the villain does exist, it'll return the message successfully retrieved villain by their name, and yeah. And then moving down to the put route, everything sound good there for the get route? Good. Then for the put route, essentially the same thing, finding the villain by their ID. So this is showing. We're requiring the parameters of the villain ID. Let's see here. And then, so then this is just showing that it's, so when we're updating the villain here, it's showing to, I believe, just only update the element that we're trying to change. So if we're changing their power, it'll leave their name and the image the same. That's why we put the load data in. And then for the set metadates, we're just calling this in order to show either when a new villain is created or no, I guess this is just for updating. So it won't actually show the date created for this. It'll just update the what did we have for the metadates, like the date updated or whatever. And then I guess this here is just showing to save the updated villain, add it to our data, and then if there's an error, it'll return the message error. Otherwise, it'll return the villain name was successfully updated, and it'll update our data. And then down here for the delete, we're again finding our villain by their ID, requiring that villain ID here. And then
Good.
And then I guess this here is just showing to remove that villain. And then if there's an error in removing it, it returns this error message for us. Otherwise, it deletes the villain. And then let's see here. I got a question out of this now.
Okay.
So, why are we using .send instead of .json?
I think that might be a typo. We can go ahead and change both of those to .json.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that was a point where Sean was getting tired, and he defaulted to what he. I often have to catch myself because when I get tired, I sometimes revert to older programming habits.
Gotcha.
It's like Jay and I were mentioning something like that muscle reflex.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, brain kicks. Oh yeah, res.send. It's like, no. You want to keep the data tight. Keep it JSON.
Yeah.
All right.
Gotcha.
Good.
Let's go see if it works now.
Yes, please.
So. All right. You want to hit me with another villain, Sean?
All right, let's go. Doctor Doom. Let's go. Another really fun. Let's do. Oh God, what's his name? Dark Seed.
Darkseid?
Darkseid. One word. Seid. Darkseid. Oh, man, you gotta catch up on your Superman villains.
I'm,
Darkseid is
yeah.
big. That is.
All
He
right.
has um, Death Vision. He looked at you and you died. Death Vision. It's literally the best
Alrighty.
approximation I can come up with. Okay, so go ahead.
Okay. Cool.
And then, real quick, put again, and let's change Death Vision to Laser Vision.
Okay.
So just that power field. There we go. Perfect. All right, now let's test that get by ID route. Good. Okay. Run it. Good. And now the delete route.
Cool.
Nice.
Your
All
important
right.
working.
And,
What was that?
sweet.
It's good. There we go. Internet flub up. All right. So, really good, Ryan. Really good. You should be super proud of this.
So can I just jump in and talk about a couple of things?
Yes. Go ahead, Jay.
So one thing I was just noticing, Ryan, when you were just doing the code reading, I just sense that you're not totally comfortable with all the, I don't want to exactly say syntax because I feel like you've got the syntax down, but I feel like when we're chaining things together, chaining these calls like router.route, and then we make a call, and then we go .get. Little unclear as to what exactly all that syntax is doing, like at a very basic level. And so I was just wondering if maybe we'll just talk about that for just a couple of seconds.
Yeah. I think that'd be awesome.
Okay, so I'm gonna just request control. Let's see if this works a little better because you and I have a good connection between each other. So
Unlike my Linux laptop today, yeah, I just did a speed test, and this laptop gets 4 times the speed.
oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
when we come up here, so what I'd like you to do, so you have this up, is open a browser tab and look up the Express documentation. So yeah, you can go ahead and put your browser in front. I mean, you're going to have to look at it. And let's bring up the Express documentation real quick.
Okay.
Or Express API.
Going up here.
Oh, perfect. So yeah, click that top link. That's what we want. Yep, we get redirected. Okay. So then in the right side, there's a little menu, and we can also just scroll down. It's going to do kind of like a scroll spy sort of thing, and that menu will just follow us. So if we scroll down just a tiny bit, keep going, and we're going to get to express.router. There it is, express.router. Okay, so here's the documentation for express.router. What does this thing do? Express.router, it creates a new router object. So we can see that you call it by saying express.router, and then you can pass in options if you want to pass in options, and that returns a router object. So we see var router equals express.router options. So then if we flip back to our code, yep, and so if we look at line 2, that's what we're doing. We're calling express.router, and that's a function. That's a function, and it returns back a new router object. In this case, we're not passing in any options, so we're just taking the defaults. All right. So now we've got this router object, and so the router object has various methods on it, and so the first method that we're going to call, or the only method that we're going to call on the router object itself, is route. So let's go back to the documentation. And down on the right side, it says router. That's the last entry in that menu. So let's hit that. A router. So it says a router object is an isolated instance of middleware and routes. So now we've got this router. We're going to configure it to handle the different URLs. And so we see on the right-hand menu, we see that it's got 5 methods. It's got router all, router method in caps. So actually it's got more than 5 methods because it's going to have a get method, a post method, put method like you were using.
Gotcha.
And then we've got this one called router route, which is the one we're trying to call. So let's call that. Let's look at the documentation for that. So it says it returns an instance of a single route, which you can then use to handle the different HTTP verbs. So that's great. So we call router route, we pass in a path, so that we're only dealing with that particular URL. And then what that's going to do is that's going to return basically a route instance that then we can call get, the post, the put. And so let's just look at your code. So we see that. We see, okay, you call router.route, like on line 5, router.route, you pass in a path. And then what that's going to do is that's going to return yet another object that has all these different methods on it. And we call get. And then the interesting thing is that the get method actually returns the router object again. So then we call post. We're actually calling post on the router object that we had before. So it allows us to chain this stuff together. So if I was to drive and just to like rewrite this code, not that the code needs to be rewritten, but I'm just saying just to rewrite it, just to kind of make things a little bit clearer, I could say okay, so that call gives me a route. And then I can call route.get, and I could put in all the stuff that we have on lines 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I could pass on all that get stuff. And then I could call route.post, and I could pass in the stuff from line 17 through, or 16 through 24. So I could structure my code like that, or we can structure the code the way we did. It's right. It's fine. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I just want you to understand that this is what's happening. That we're getting a hold of this route object, and then we're configuring it. We're calling get on it. We're calling post on it. This is just a nice, quick way of doing the same thing without having to declare the variable.
I gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. I'm gonna comment it out and save it.
Yeah, you can delete it, or whatever, or comment it out, whatever you want to do. Sure. If that's something you want to.
I've tried to get them in the practice of commenting out good code like that because it'll help refresh them and remind them when they come back to the file. Unless it's just a swath of comments, in which case, I mean, if it's cluttering your code, delete it.
Sure. So all we're really doing when we're programming is we're invoking functions, and then we're getting back some return value from our functions, and then we're doing something with the return value. And the return value, there's really not a whole lot of possibilities for return value. It's going to be an object, it's going to be an array, it's going to be another function, or it's going to be a simple type like a string or a number or a Boolean, or it's just going to be null or undefined. And that's pretty much it. I mean, there's maybe a few other little things out there, but that's, for the most part, you call a function, you get a return value, and you do something with that return value. So in the case of this, we call router route. That's a function. It returns us an object. We call get. We call the get method on that object, and that get method does some stuff. And then that get method returns an object. And then on that object, we call post. And that post method does some stuff. And then we don't really care about the return value of that post call. We're just starting it.
Right.
Because it's not important to us. Because what's really important is the configuration that we're doing in the methods themselves. So that's all I wanted to say. I just want you to see that it's not magic. We have objects, we have functions, we call functions either by themselves or we call functions attached to objects. If we call a function by itself, we just call it a function. If we call a function when it's attached to an object, we call it a method.
Gotcha.
And then we get return values, and we do stuff with those return values. We might chain like several function calls together if the return values support such a thing, or we might just take a return value and assign it to a variable.
Gotcha.
Just not magic. So it just helps, I think, to at each stage of the game, you ask yourself, okay, I called route and I passed in a parameter. I passed in this little string that's just a slash. I called route. What did I get back? What was my return value? It was something, because now I'm calling methods on that.
Right.
Good thing to ask yourself, sort of like, well, what's happening here?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thanks, Jay.
Sure.
All right, so, okay, we have 10 minutes here, 11 minutes, really. So at this point, what I'm going to ask you to do here, Ryan, is add, commit, and push your code. We haven't done that a lot. Oh, and you have a blue dot.
Yeah.
Evil blue dot.
Blue dot of death. So go ahead to add, commit, and push that code.
So what's the keyboard shortcut to save everything?
Adam doesn't really have one.
What? No way.
Yeah, I'm not even kidding. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I might have control. Let me get up. Whew.
Yeah. It's not even funny. So, what are you going to do, though?
All right. All good.
All right. So that's good to go. So for the last 2 minutes here, I really, I think this is, we don't want to get too far ahead here of Pierre.
Yeah.
But one thing I will have us do, what do I want to have us do?
I could talk about varlet and const if you want me to do that. Or
Take it away, Jay. Let's do that. So let's give you a little bit of a better understanding of varlet and const. Go ahead, Jay.
Cool.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and share. Oh, you should release your screen share, Ryan.
Oh, yeah, you got it. There you go.
Okay, so when we're coding, there's this idea of scope, there's a term that's often thrown around. It's called scope. And what scope is scope is all of the names that you can currently reference in your code. And what do I mean by that? All the names that you can currently reference in your code. So that just means that, like, if you create a variable, and I create a variable called foo, and then I want to reference foo. Foo is in scope. It's a name. The name is foo. It's a name that I can see from this point in the code. Okay? So when we're programming, what we're often doing is we're managing the scope. We're trying to keep only the names in view that we need to complete the task at hand. And we don't just want like tons of extra names, tons of extra variables, tons of extra functions. We don't want those to be in view, because then we run into these naming collisions. You might name two things the same thing, and you might not know it, and then you end up with weird bugs because you called two variables the same thing. So when we're coding, we're trying to really kind of like minimize what's in view. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So in JavaScript, we have the global scope, which is this set of names which is always available. And if I type window in the browser, window refers to the global scope, and I can open the global scope, and you can see this thing. Look at all this crap in there. It just goes on and on. It's large. The global scope has all these variables, all these names that are in view. My goodness, I mean, it's like there's a million these things like that, all NTP this, NTP that. I don't even know what that is. And there's all these event handlers that are in view. So all these names are in view all the time. There's really no way to not have them be in view. Luckily, they've got, for the most part, really complex names. And so we're not likely to accidentally type those names, right? We're not accidentally, it's not likely that we're going to overwrite them or do something weird. So in virtually every programming language that's useful, there's what's called block scope. And block scope simply means that when you go into a block, and in JavaScript, a block is denoted by a pair of curly braces. When you go into a block and you declare a variable, you create a name inside that block, then you can reference that name from within that block. But if you're outside that block, you can't reference it. So I just executed this block. I created this variable called bar. But if I try to reference bar down here, it's no longer defined. Okay, because the variable bar only exists inside this block. And once I leave that block, it's gone. Okay, so that's called block scope. And if I nest the blocks, then the visibility nests just the same way. So if I created a variable called A, A doesn't matter, and then I create a new block, and I create a variable B, and then I say it's console log A and B. And then let's go here and try to console log A and B. So what I see is the first console log ran fine and could see both A and B from this point. So at this point in the code, we can see A because A is in an enclosing block, and we can see B because B is in the current block. But when we go back out to the enclosing block, we lose sight of B. We can't see it anymore from here. And so our console log errors out. It says B is not defined. All right? It didn't say A is not defined. We can still see A down here because we're in the same block, which is this block.
Right.
But we can't see B. All right. So this is called block scope, and the variable declaration keyword const declares a variable with block scope. So that's very important because block scope is really, really useful. Whereas the keyword var, when you declare a variable var has a very strange scope. Okay, it's technically called function scope, but it's hideous scope is what it is. It doesn't make any sense scope is what it is. It's the kind of scope that gets you in big trouble. Okay, so they basically obsoleted var, and they gave us two new keywords. They gave us const and they gave us let. Both of those keywords declare variables of block scope. And so that's what we want to use now. So when we're programming, we just want to use const and we want to use let. Block scope is a kind of scope that you can understand. It makes sense to our minds. Whereas var is a kind of scope that doesn't make any sense to our brains, and so there's no point in using it.
Right. Gotcha.
Okay? So I think that's fine. It's 8:30 right now. That's sort of all I needed to say. I don't need to go like into a whole lot more detail. I just wanted you to kind of get a quick exposure to explicit block scope so you can see it. It's like intuitive. It's kind of intuitive. It's like we've been doing it. You've been doing it the whole time in this class. You've been using block scope and didn't maybe totally realize it, but yet it just sort of made sense probably on some intuitive level.
Sure. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And so like whenever you declare a function, say I declared a function ping, and I go in here and I declare some variable that's I don't know, all right, so I declare this function ping, and then I can call ping, not pint. Boy, a pint does sound pretty good right about now. So I declare this function ping, and look, we got curlies, so we've got a block. This is a block, and so everything in here that we declare using const and let is going to be in block scope. So that means that our message variable is only visible inside this block. It only exists inside that block. So down here, if I tried to reference message, I get message is not defined. So that's great. So block scope allows us to kind of do our work. We can declare the variables that we need to declare to get our jobs done. And then when we're outside of the block scope, it's like they don't exist. And that's nice. That's an important thing because that keeps us from stepping on our own toes. All right. That's it.
Yeah.
That was beautiful, Jay. That's perfect.
10 minutes. Take up 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes, I think. Ryan, do you understand now why we use const and let so much more?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's super important because var is one of those things where Little did you know that if you declared var I equals 0 for like a for loop or something, and then you call I and increment it and log it outside there, you'll see that you can still have access to I. Yeah, that's terrifying, right? You don't
right.
Yeah,
Your I should only be visible inside your for loop. That's the only
Yeah.
place in your code that it makes sense to
right.
But
And that's
Right, gotcha.
will
Like-
leak that I. That's the like textbook example of like why var is so hideous. But there's more. I mean, you could go on forever. It's so bad.
Oh yeah.
But
My favorite one is when someone declares, if you declare a JavaScript variable without a declarator, it's available to the entire program.
That's right. If you don't preface your variable with var letter const, it goes into the global scope.
Gotcha.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, noted.
Thankfully, like runtimes and compilers and the linter are catching that now. So it's much harder to get away with accidentally sticking something in the global scope.
Yes.
You used to be able to, it used to just like if you forgot your var or whatever, it would just go into the global scope. You'd have no idea that it did that. You wouldn't actually get like a bug right away because your code would still work. The variable is still available, but it's not working the way you think it is.
Gotcha.
All right.
So until tomorrow evening.
Till tomorrow evening.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. I appreciated the like the 2-on-1 time. Sweet.
Good.
This is good. All right.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Until tomorrow.
Till tomorrow.
All right, sounds good. Cool. See you guys.
Bye.